Additional aids and services are available to individuals with disabilities. To make such a request, please contact us by email, by clicking the Help tab in the PD portal, or at pdportal@tamu.edu, by phone, including Relay Texas at 1-800-441-7323, or in writing to Train PD, PD Portal Support, 4477 TAMU, College Station, Texas 77843. Both a transcript and accessible document of the content presented in this webinar can be found as resources in the course description. Click on the blue links under Course Resources in the description. When a link is clicked, a new browser window will open.
Welcome to Engage Readers with Clusive Part 1. I'm Anne-Marie Molinari-Sanders. I'm going to be your host today, helping Wendy out, and I'm joined by Wendy Christensen, who is with T-Call, and thank you so much, Wendy C., for being here, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, so a couple of things to remember, that we do have some technical help out there for you if you need it. But there are two numbers. You can call T-Call if you're having any difficulty during the webinar, or you also can email us at pdportal@tamu.edu. That's very important. We do want to remind you about some wonderful support that you can receive with the Distance Education Call Center. I think it's amazing that they're open 7 days a week from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m. And that's how you contact the Distance Education Call Center. And they will help you with technical support. They will come to your site if you need it, your actual program. So reach out to them if you have any questions. I want to welcome our presenter today. Wendy Velez Torres is the Senior Instructional and Digital Accessibility Specialist at Coppin State University in Maryland. She is also pursuing her doctorate degree in education with a concentration in adult leadership at Frostburg University. Gwendolyn Velez Torres is a seasoned educator with 23 years of teaching experience and a United States Marine Corps veteran. So I do want to thank her for her service as well. Her dedication to digital accessibility ensures that all students can benefit from inclusive educational practices.
Again, my name is Wendy, and this is what we're going to do today. So I'm going to share with you a free tool that you can use that's called Clusive, and it's a tool that you can use with your students to kind of engage with written content. And again, it's a free tool. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how it works with universal design. We're going to identify 3 accessibility features that particular tool has and talk about how that might be useful for our students. And then we're going to also do a guided activity. So I'm actually going to walk you through the actual tool. We're going to actually upload something to the tool and see how it works and kind of feel it as a student, and then see how we can think about it. So this is the first part of the series. So the next one of this is going to be part 2, where we talk about, okay, now that we've seen the tool, how can we utilize it with our students? How do we adapt it? How do we change it? Some more of the nitty gritty, like going inside and thinking in terms of, okay, now that I've played with it, how do I apply it? Things we're going to explore today. We're going to talk very briefly about the Universal Design for Learning, that framework, and we're going to get into the tool called Clusive. I do want to let you know about who I am. So I'm going to take you on a little journey here. The picture in front of you is my daughter when she was very little in kindergarten. I was a very young special educator at the time, still kind of brand new to the field, didn't have much teaching experience under my belt. And I was teaching at a school that was at that time considered a level 5, level 6 school. At that time, they had different levels for the school. And so a level 5, level 6 school was considered a non-public school where the students went to school and they also lived on campus. They don't have the levels anymore in terms of the terminology, but that's what it was called. So I was teaching students. And so all my students were students who were special education students who, for whatever reason, could not be educated in the regular public school system. And so I'm a new special educator. I'm looking for a tool to help my students. And I found this great web tool that I thought was pretty cool. And I was like, oh, this is great. I can't wait to share it with my students. And the next day I shared it with my students, and all my students loved it but one. I had one student, his name was Antonio. Antonio had muscular dystrophy, which means he had limited use of his limbs, and he used a motorized wheelchair to get around and also to complete his assignments. So because of that, Antonio could not use the tool that I shared because he could not use a standard mouse. He could not move a standard mouse like the rest of us could who don't have limitations with our limbs. He required his joystick on his motorized wheelchair to use that. And so he could not fully participate with that tool. And I remember feeling really bad about that. So his aide had to help him. By doing that, I didn't know at the time, but I took away his independence because Antonio was a student who wanted to do everything like all the other students. He didn't want anybody doing it for him. And so he was not able to fully engage with the platform at that time. At that time, I didn't know what to do about it. We just kind of trucked along. And again, this was about 20 years ago. Fast forward, now I've got my master's. I've got another child as well. So I've got my daughter. She's older. I've got a son. My son is actually diagnosed as being autistic. I get in the role here at Coppin where part of my role is to actually look at the digital accessibility of the products that we're using with our students. As part of that job, I would look and see, how could somebody who is disabled be able to use this tool? And I ended up finding the exact same issues that I had with Antonio, which was over 20 years ago. But now my reaction is different. Now my reaction is now I'm angry. Like, what do you mean we haven't changed this? What do you mean we haven't addressed this? And it's different now because now it's personally affecting me because it's personally affecting my son. And you would think as a special educator, I would have made that connection, but it's different when it's your own child. Up to that point, I really did think that all of them were kind of accessible because the law stated they had to be. I didn't realize they weren't until I actually tested these out. So if I come off as very passionate about this, it is because it is highly personal for me. My son is disabled. All my students were special education students, and I'm also the daughter of two disabled parents. So I've seen it from that perspective. The tool that I'm going to share with you today actually is a tool that meets high accessibility features, which means that it will also work for someone assistive technology, and it's more inclusive for all students who are able to use it. The tool that I'm going to share with you today really goes with the universal design principles. So, universal design for learning, often called UDL, actually came from the idea of the universal design for building. So, a universally designed building for like a physical space would have like a ramp or an elevator. Those ramps were made for specific people, like people who are wheelchair users or someone who may have a mobility issue. However, how many of us have used it, especially if you're a mom, you're pushing that stroller up that ramp. Or, for example, elevators actually weren't designed for people who could readily walk up the steps. However, how many of us want to go up 4 or 5 flights of steps unless we're, really trying to get some cardio? So those were actually designed for a specific group, but other people benefit. So universal design for learning kind of takes that same idea that students all come to us with different needs. And so what fires up one student is not going to fire up another. So for one student, they might be able to express themselves better verbally, where another student might be able to express themselves typing or with a written format. Universal design for learning basically says that we give our students different ways to engage with it. So different ways to engage with the content. So it might be a video, it might be an interactive activity or something like that, multiple means of representation. So we provide it in different ways so they can see it and other ways so they can express it. So for example, if it's a test, okay, does everything have to be a test, or maybe it's a project, or maybe it's a report, or do I give my students the option of how they can respond? So if I give them a prompt, do I tell them you must type it, or can you also submit your answer as a verbal response? So for example, my son, that works for him. If you ask him to physically write, that's actually a very daunting task for him because he is autistic, but he also has dysgraphia. So when you look at his writing, it looks like a first grader wrote it. So the physical act of writing is very hard for him. If you ask him to write, you're going to get very limited sentences because he's focusing so much on trying to get those letters corrected that he's lost his thought. If you ask him what the thing is telling you, he will give you a whole book and tell you everything about it, especially if it's something that he really likes, like football. You will know all the stats. That's what universal design for learning kind of uses. It's just a way to kind of address the different needs of all our students, and it removes the barriers that exist. So if you do have a digital tool out there that you want to use, you want to make sure that all the students are able to access it, so we don't have that issue that happened with Antonio, where it wasn't because he didn't know the content I was sharing, it was because he couldn't fully participate in it. He couldn't fully engage with it because he had to rely on someone else. It's a nice flexible way, brings another exclusive environment. These guidelines were actually created by what we call as CAST, and that's for the Center for Applied Special Technology. They have a whole guideline in there that's a tool. So the tool actually breaks it down. So we call like a Venn diagram kind of thing, where they can actually put in, it'll give you the prompts. How are you going to engage your students with this content? What are different ways you can do multiple means of representation? That link that is on there takes you to a site where you can download their template and use that, and you can decide how you want that template to look. So that template could be that you want the prompts and you want to type them in. It could be blank, and it kind of guides you with that, like a scaffolding view, where it's like, okay, put this in, and it also provides it in multiple languages. So that's sort of like the guideline for it. With UDL, it does increase accessibility and reduces those barriers, because basically you're designing it so that everyone, even if those people who are in the corners kind of thing, have access, so that you're less worried about, can they all use it, because everyone's benefiting from it, even if it's not something specifically for that person. It does engage with different participation, and it does improve their learning outcomes. Now that I've told you all this stuff about UDL, I'm going to share with you a tool called Clusive. Clusive was created by CAST, and it is a free tool that allows you to have digital reading materials. So you're sharing an article with your students, it has some text in there, and it allows the students to be able to customize that. It's following that framework of the UDL, where the students are getting it in different ways to get the information. I'm going to share a very quick video for it, and then I'm going to show you. We're going to actually do a demo, and then during the demo, I'm going to ask you, please put this in. Let's take a look at it.
Clusive, a customizable learning environment that adapts to you.
To me, to everybody. When I get into Clusive, I can check out my recent activity, then head to the library to find something to read. In the library, I can choose from all readings, readings my teacher has assigned, or readings I've uploaded myself. Here's an article on sports and grades. Based on how well I know the words, Clusive makes a recommendation for a challenge level that's just right for me. But I can always change that. I really like sports, so I'm going to switch to the most challenging level. But if I didn't get enough sleep last night, I might have switched to an easier version. I can try out different settings and tools to learn what works best for me. And I can use the word lookup and read aloud tools that help me to get through the reading.
Affect. Verb, to make a difference or have an impact on.
Clusive adjusts to me based on what I do and what I prefer. As you use Clusive, you'll learn more about your strengths and where you can build skills to make choices that work best for you. And the more it can help you to see what you're doing, what you're learning, and how you are reacting to different readings and topics.
There are lots of features for teachers and parents too. You can import your student lists with Google Classroom, upload your own readings, assign them to your students, and customize the knowledge questions, vocabulary words, and even definitions. Back on the dashboard, you'll see reading activity for each of your classes, student reactions, what's popular, answers to knowledge questions, and reading time details. Dive in to see what else you can discover about Clusive and how much you can teach Clusive about you. For more information, contact us at the Center on Inclusive Software for Learning, CISL@cast.org. CAST, until learning has no limits.
That is the brief overview of what it is. Now we're going to talk about how we actually get to it. I would like everybody to click on that link because we're going to go through this together. This is Clusive. When a student goes to this, they would see this website and then they would just go in with a username or password, either they created or one that you created for them. If you have little ones, I would recommend you do it for them. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go in as a guest. So I'm going to have you guys go in as a guest so you can see how a student experiences it. And I'm going to go through the different features. And then once we've gone through all those features, then I'm going to show you how to make your own account on Clusive. And then we're going to do a document on Clusive. When you first get there, you don't even have to sign up for an account. They kind of let you try it on as a guest. So that's what we're going to do right now. So on your screen, there is sort of like a reddish button that says try inclusive. So what I would like you to do is I'd like you to click on that. And then when you do that, it's going to try to give you a tour of what's going on. And I'm just going to say got it because I am the tour today. The very first thing anyone using this platform is going to see is the dashboard. So we're seeing it from the perspective of a student. So as an instructor, you're going to have a few more options available to you. It gives you a reading right here that I can look at, sort of like a how-to guide. There's an option to upload a new reading or go to my personal library. At the top, there's an option that says library. There's another option that says word bank. And when you click on library, it may come up with a video. So every screen has these videos to kind of guide people with instructions if they're brand new to this. I'm just going to click on got it. And right now it's showing all the public readings. If you don't see a reading in there, you can go to the view on the left-hand side and click on that drop-down menu. It's going to give you different options. So we've got starred readings. So those are favorite readings that somebody may have wanted. Public readings. In this case, these are readings that are public that other people have shared through Clusive and have allowed permission. Uploaded readings. So uploaded readings would be readings that you've personally have uploaded to this that are yours that you've created for your students, or all readings. By default, because we're in as a guest, it's going to give us the public readings, the readings that the instructors have given Clusive permission to share. When you create a reading, it's shared with your students and the students who have access to it. It's not made public unless you make it public. You have that control if you don't want other people to see your content. These are ones that are shared. It's a dashboard. So in this case, maybe I want to know about John Adams. And so when I look at the one that says John Adams, it's going to give me some things. It's going to tell me it's nonfiction, it's history, the subject matter is law and physics, and it tells me that it's geared towards the high school audience. So let's say I just click on that. You just click on John Adams on Thomas Jefferson. So I'm just going to click on that, and you can do that as well on your screen. The very first thing that pops up are some vocabulary words. It's asking me, have I ever heard of these words that are showing up on this particular article? And the reason this is showing up, it's trying to level the reading level for the reader. So if the reader says, I haven't heard of it, it's going to try to change what they're seeing on the screen so that it's more on the level for comprehension. So someone can actually go through this and say, yes, I've heard of it. I haven't. I don't know that word. I don't use it. Or they can skip to it. If they skip to it, they're going to get the article in the original level that it was. So I could say, I've never heard of it. It's going to say, have you heard this one? It's just trying to get a gauge of who I am. However, as a student, they can adjust this when they get in there. All right, so it says now, so I can either skip it and go to the article or just say all set. And when I get into the article, this is how a student is going to see the article. And this is that dashboard that they're going to see. They're going to see the text that's on the page. They're going to see any images that may be associated with it. And then the students have some flexibility as to what they can do on this screen. On the left are some tools that they can use over here. It just lets them know what they have. There's an option for highlights and notes. So if a student is highlighting anything on there, they can make personal notes to themselves. And I'll demonstrate how to do that. The students can also change the version. So in this case, I'm on the highest version, so they can't change to the level just because we're in guest. If I was in my actual account, I could change it, but because it's a guest mode, that's why it's not allowing me to do that. The student can scroll down if they choose to do so, or they can just click on these carrots to go back and forth between the pages, depending on what their personal preference is for that. On the right, there's an icon that looks like, I guess it's an octagon. So if you click on the octagon, there are some options, and these are the personalization tools that each individual student is going to have. So in this case, they all have the exact same content. It's the same article, but they can adjust it to what works best to how they learn and what works for their needs. So maybe they are older and want the text to be bigger. Maybe they just have old eyes like I have and need that. Perhaps they might be dyslexic. And if they're dyslexic, they might want the line spacing to be different and separated so that it works better for their processing. They can decide how they want that information spread out, how they want the letters spaced out, because that does matter. Particularly if somebody is dyslexic, they may be moving those letters or inverting them or cutting parts of the letters off. So having space between letters actually helps people understand how they're reading it. And they can also decide what font they want and if they want a specific color. So I tend to like darker colors just because for my eyes it helps me. But the students can personalize this how they want. But it also gives them some reading tools. So that's the display. And there's some reading tools that they can do. This will allow you to read the content out loud to the student. So the student can decide that voice that they want. It is a mechanical voice, but they can decide if it's a male or a female, how fast they want. And they can also decide if they want to translate that language. So if this is an English as a second language speaker, maybe this is going to be easier for them to understand that content. I speak Spanish, so I can select Spanish and I can see, will it do it in Spanish for me?
Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3.
Yep. So I can say maybe I wanted to do it in Spanish, and then it'll actually change that for me if I choose a different language. This option with this little triangle will allow you to read it. So when it reads it, it's going to highlight the content for that particular student.
Portrait of John Adams. From John Adams to Timothy Pickering, August 6, 1822. Monticello, August 6, 1822.
So it allows it to read, and they can adjust that so that voice isn't correct. If that voice is not saying what I want it to say, if it's too fast, if it's too slow, they can change that. So right now, it's not letting me save the settings because we are in the kind of a guest mode. However, when you're in your account, you're actually able to save those settings, and so can the student. So the student can really personalize this for how they want to engage with this content. And it will highlight those words. For some students, that is extremely critical. I told you about my son. So for him, he will lose his space all the time when he's reading because he's focusing on everything that's going on around him. He probably has ADHD as well. And so he's focusing on the bug that's on the wall and he's focusing on this and he's trying to read and he's lost his space. So the fact that it highlights, it actually focuses his attention. He's able to focus better when it's read out loud to him. He needs to hear it several times for him to understand it. So that's for him, but this could also be helpful for anybody who may not be disabled. Maybe they just have tired eyes. They can have it read out loud just to make sure that they're getting the flow of it. I am a doctoral student, so I have a lot of articles that they give me, and I often use that speech to text just to alleviate my eyes from reading all that content. On here, there's some thoughts. So the student could then go in here, and then if they're kind of frustrated with this, they can select that and they can tell me about it. Students are going to be honest. They might be like, why do I have to read this? Or I don't want to read this, or I don't understand this. But it gives you feedback. But the nice thing about this is if you're putting it in there, the other students are not going to see what their classmates are saying. This is going to be shared with the instructor. So the instructor can go in and see the feedback. Their classmates are not going to see their classmates' feedback. So it's really nice. Students tend to be brutally honest, but sometimes they don't tend to be as honest if they feel like their classmates are going to judge them for that. This is shared by the actual instructor. And then I can put a thought there. And then I can also star this as a favorite so that it shows up. That's what a student would see when they see that. There's also an option at the top that says word bank. And when you select the word bank, this is where you can decide the different words. So in this case, it's showing me these are the words I said I didn't know. I can reset those and I can add new words in there. So as an instructor, I can actually add more words in there. So if there are words that I feel like my students don't know, I can do that as well.
Is this diagram relative to social emotional learning?
Yes, that's sort of like getting a pulse check to kind of see how students are feeling as they're going along. But because your students don't see their classmates' responses, it kind of lets them know, okay, how am I feeling this? So they can be honest and say, I don't know what you're talking about. And they can say that to you, but they probably wouldn't want their classmates to know that for fear of being clowned or teased or other issues that might go with that. If the majority of students are saying they're frustrated with this text, then maybe that's something that could be like, okay, now we need to slow down and figure out why are they frustrated? What is frustrating about this text that's causing these emotions? All right, so now let's say I'm a student and I want to kind of make some annotations. I want to make some notes to myself on this. As a student, I can actually highlight or click on anything on here. So if I wanted to click on this word favor, when I do that, when I just use my mouse to engage with that word, I get some options that show up on my screen here. This option is for my note taking, so I can see what that means. I can add a note to myself. Maybe it's a note that the student's like, I don't know what that means, or I want to get more information on that. And the nice thing about that is that those notes are the student's notes, they're their personal notes. You, as the instructor, can see them if you want, but their classmates don't see that. So it's their personal information for themselves. If I do this again, I can also highlight something else, and I also get another feature. Maybe I don't know what that word means. And I can click on it and it'll give me all those words that I highlighted. So in this case, I highlighted 3 words and it's giving me the information as to what that means. And then the student can then add that to their word bank if they wanted to change the levels of that. Highlight another one. So this is anytime you activate that highlight. There's another one that has these little arrows that go back and forth. And if I select that, it's going to translate that. So maybe I want the text to be translated. So in this case, it's telling me a word for it. So they're saying triste, which is sad in Spanish. So the student can highlight the entire text if they want, and they would translate it for them, or they can do word by word if that helps them if they're an English as a second language student. And that's particularly helpful because certain words might mean something in one language and mean something completely different in another. That's something they can use. And then the other option that comes up is this read aloud. So it will actually read that word or that selection. So they can do whole words, the entire page, or parts of it, and it'll read it out loud for them.
Dismal.
So then if they need that repetition, they can do that. So they can read the whole document if they want. They can go back to the document and they can kind of make notes as they go along. And it's very personalized because one student might know what this means, but another student might not. They can save this information and it saves their progress.
So if you want to do text to speech for the whole article, do you have to highlight everything and then hit and then it'll read everything?
No, the text to speech will work automatically if you just click on the little triangle if you want to just read the whole article. So if I selected a specific spot, it'll start reading there. But if I wanted to go back, so maybe they read it, I'm like, wait, I missed that. I could select this and it would read that whole thing. So it kind of gives them the option. Do you want the whole thing or wait, I need to go back to that. I missed something. And so that actually helps me. So when it's reading it, sometimes I do need to go back and I don't want to go through the whole document again. I just want that one section. I can highlight that. So again, that's the dashboard right there. And then when you come here at the end where it says guest, we can log out. And I actually want you to do that because now I've shown you what it looks like. Let's make an account. And then I want to show you how this would work as an actual instructor. Like, how do I put an article in? How do I adjust this for my students? So if you click on where it says guest, it's probably a guest and some random number it's assigning you. If you just click on that and click on log out, that will take you back to the Clusive page. Here's what we're going to do. Now you've seen it. Now let's get in and actually start creating some stuff here. So when you get here, you've got a couple options. If you have a Google account, you could use that to log in after you create it. But what we're going to do is we're going to create a free account. So you would select that option where it says create a free account, and that would be for the instructors. Now for your students, you would actually create the accounts for them. You can create the username and the password. For your older ones, you can give them the choice to change the password. For your little ones, you probably don't. So for when I taught the little ones, it was everybody had the same password. They just had to remember whatever their username was, but everybody had the exact same password for simplicity. But it depends on your students. But for you as an instructor, you want to click on create a free account. It's going to ask you what your role is. So are you a teacher, are you a parent, or you're a learner? Are you using Clusive for yourself? And that's just for their data. You can use whichever one you prefer. You just click on continue, and then it's going to ask you some questions on here. Your display name, that's the username that you would like to have available when you go in. It could be your email or it could be the name that you want people to see. So typically, if we are sharing articles with other people and it's public, we might not want our full name on there. We might want to have a pseudonym or something. You could put that in. Your display name could be the same as your username. That is up to you. But the display name would be what somebody sees if you choose to make your articles public. That's usually should be some kind of pseudonym in case you don't want people to know your full name, or for privacy from students. I usually just give them the same username and display name, and it's usually not their full name or something. It's usually a pseudonym so that they're not identified. You would then create whatever password you like, and you would put it in your email. For students, they don't have to have an email, which I'll show you when we get in there. But for you as an instructor, you want to have your email. It's going to then ask you what level you are. When you click on continue, it's going to ask you some questions. And then when you're done filling it out, it's going to send a verification link to your email. Once you complete that and you get that verification link, you just click on that verification link, and then you'll be able to access your account. And the reason they want to do a verification link, they want to make sure that it's a genuine, actual email so that they can communicate with you if they need to. They're not going to sell your information. They don't actually spam you. It's just so that they know that this is actually a live person creating this account. So when you log in, so you want to log into your account with whatever email you used. If you did use a Gmail account, you can just click on login with Gmail, and then it'll ask you to do your Gmail. And the reason it lets you do with the Google, so in case you do use Google Classroom, it's just easier to sync. When you get in, the very first thing that you see, they might ask you like a tutorial kind of thing. You'll see your reactions on the left. There's a video that says resources on there. In the middle, it'll say student reading. So in my case, I've actually put something in there. You probably don't have anything in there at the moment. At the top, you're going to see dashboard. You'll see something that says library. There's another link in there that says resources, which was not available in the guest view. There's an option that says manage, which is where you put your settings in for the students and for your word bank. When you click on the resources at the top, it's actually different things for instructors in terms of how to do that. So if you forget or you're not sure, these are some quick guides that show you how to do things that are available to anybody who uses Clusive. So if you forgot how it looks or you need to go back in, it's kind of a quick tutorial kind of thing for you available. So I'm going to go back to my dashboard. And in this case, you'll see that I actually do have a reading that I've put on there. I actually want you guys to put a reading in there so that you can see what's accepted and how it looks. Where it says library, that's where you have all these different options where you can say upload it and you can see what you want. So in this case, we actually want to make a document. You can use your own document for this. Where it says upload a new reading, I will click on that. And then when I do that, it's going to ask me what kind of document am I uploading. I can upload up to 3 different kinds of documents, but let me give you the caveat that comes with one of them. One of them is an EPUB, so that's an electronic publisher's got like a Kindle file or an e-text. That's usually what that is. If you have that file, you can upload that. If it's a standard Word document, you can upload that. Or if it's a PDF, you can upload that as well. However, with PDFs, I will be very honest with you with PDFs. PDFs do not work as well with this simply because if the PDF is not created correctly, it won't give a lot of the interactivity that comes with it. So for example, it won't have the read to text if it's a scanned document. It won't be able to read it. Students might not be able to adjust the fonts and stuff like that. It just depends on how that particular PDF is formatted. So those tend to be a little bit problematic with this just because PDFs in general are not a very accessible platform for students. My friend who is blind actually said the PDF should stand for a pretty disappointing format. Just kind of giving you the caveat for that. There is another option that shows up here at the bottom, which says add from Bookshare. If you don't know what Bookshare is a free product that is given by the US government. And what happens is you have to have somebody with a qualifying disability. It might be a vision impairment, it might be a reading disability or anything like that. And then students can get their books from Bookshare, any book on there, just like a library. And then they can have reading and all that. So if they have an account with Bookshare, they would be able to upload their Bookshare content in there. So your librarian can also do this. Your librarian can set up an account as a librarian, and then she can also provide books for students who have disabilities under that account. And then the students are kind of borrowing books just like they would in a library, and they can upload this to that as well. And that's a free program that's available to anybody who's a student. And then if they're not students, or maybe they're just lovers of reading, they can also get accounts for less than $1 a day. It's a really small price for it. And then international students can also use it as well. Again, for a very low price. It's a few cents a day, if that, with a subscription for it. But it is free to all students who are current students, whether they're kindergarten all the way to higher ed. So after I graduate, if I wanted to use Bookshare, I can do that. I would just have an individual account and pay that very, very small fee, just so you're aware about what Bookshare is. You can actually upload a document. And again, you can upload your own document. I do want to say that it does give you some resources also for converting documents. So if it's an EPUB, they give you some links right there that allow you to convert that over to a Word document. And they also make a suggestion for you on converting a PDF. So one of the tricks that I typically use with my faculty, if they have a PDF, I tell them to go to Word and then click on File and click on the actual PDF. The newest version of Word will then take that PDF and try to convert it over to a text format. And so typically that works really well, depending on the PDF. If it's a scanned PDF, it's probably not going to pull stuff in there that I can convert over. Then I would probably need the Adobe Pro to actually edit it, but converting it in Word seems to work very well. And a lot of people tend to have Word just because Office 365 seems to be the platform many institutions tend to use. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that Word document. So I'm just going to go under Browse, and it's going to go into my actual document. I'm just going to go ahead and grab it, push Open. And then once it's there, I just click on Upload File, and then that file will then show up here. Now, when I do that, this is what it's going to ask me. It's going to ask me who the author is. The sort author, that is if you have different people with the same name and you want to distinguish, I just usually put the same name in there, like Wendy T, Wendy T. You can put a description in that library if you choose to do so. You don't have to. If you want to add an image, like a cover image, so the students know what that is, so visually they know, oh, I need to go to this picture with this image, you could do that. It's going to ask you what the subject matter is. You can select one or all of those or whatever this subject matter might be. And then it's going to kind of ask you what reading level is this for. So is it high school? Is it advanced? Like is it higher ed? Once you complete all that and you click on add to uploaded recordings, then you'll be able to have it in your dashboard. And I'm going to go ahead and go back to my dashboard because I've already uploaded it to my dashboard.
What do we put for sort author?
Let's say you've got two people with the same name. So in this case, we have two Wendy's in this webinar. It would sort it out like Wendy T, Wendy A, or whatever. I just usually use the same name. That's just in case you have different students. So it wants to be like, how are we going to sort this? Is this Donovan A or is it Donovan B? Or so you can actually assign articles to a specific class. So you can assign your readings, and you can also assign any readings that somebody has made public. So if somebody has made something public, you can also assign it to your class if you choose to do so. Because, you know, as teachers, we don't steal, we just borrow and don't give back.
I have the document, but I'm lost. Can you repeat the process again from the top? How does she put it in inclusive?
So she wants to be in the dashboard, and then she wants to select the option that says upload a new reading. When you do that, you have to click on the browse option to find wherever the document is located. By default, it goes to my downloads on my computer. It might go somewhere else on your computer, wherever you've saved this particular document. And then you just click on that document. And then once you do that and you see the name of the file, then you have to click on the actual button that says upload file. And then that's when it's going to give you these options as to what to fill out. So then in the dashboard, once I've actually uploaded it, and I can click on it, and then I get that familiar dashboard that we've seen before, where I can then interact with this. And then I can change the way it looks and customize it and all that. Now it's in my dashboard. If I wanted to, I could assign it to my students. I could create a class where my students would be able to access it and I can share it with them. Or maybe this is something personal for me. It's just my private library that I'm using for myself. I'm not assigning it to any students or anything. I just want to personally use it. I can do that if I want to. So this would be that dashboard that I showed you. But if I wanted to actually share this with someone other than myself, it's something I want to actually share with students, that's what this manage with option would show up. This is where I can then create a class or I can add a student to the class. This is a test class, I called it. You might see something that says add class, and you're going to see two options that show up if you say add class. One is create a class manually, meaning you're naming it. It could be demo class, test class. You could have multiple classes. Or if you do happen to use Google Classroom, you could import your Google Classroom in there if you have a Google Classroom. In this case, I just created it manually. I just called it a class, and then it's literally just the name of the class. And then I can add a student to this class if I wanted to. And the way it would work is I would then create the display name, that username that they want, and I can create a password for them. I do not need to put the email address. And that's important, particularly for little ones, because for little ones, under the law, they're not supposed to legally have email access until they're 13, at least under the US federal law. They might not have an email that is their email. They might be assigned one from the school system, but technically they're not supposed to have it by their 13. So you don't have to put in an email address. You would just put in their username, whatever password you want them to have. And then you could put their email if they're older students, but you don't have to. They don't need an email to access this. For the password, if I start typing in a password, once I put that information in, it's going to give me another option directly underneath it that says, do I want my students to be able to reset their own passwords? So maybe the older ones might want to have their own password. That's fine. But for example, when I taught the little ones, my kindergartners or my first graders, we had a very simple password and they all had the exact same password, so nobody forgot it. I would tell it to the parents, here's the password, and every parent knew it. And it was the exact same password for every student if you do have little ones where that is an issue. That is how they would be added. And then I could choose to assign that to that student if I wanted to.
I know that there is a library. Is there a way to filter? Is it by topic or by grade level?
Yeah, you can. If I say all readings, when I go into library, I can sort it out. So in this case, I've sorted it out by class or the uploaded readings. So for example, for my test class, I only want to see what's in there. And I can also filter that out if I wanted to. There's filters in here that I can add. And that's also when you go into the readings. So if I go to all the readings, I can also do a filter and I can say, I only want middle school and I only want this topic and these many words. And I can also go into the library here where it says search and type in a keyword to see if there's some article already in there. But that's how you can filter that. And again, these are if you've made those public. Let's say maybe there's one that I really like. I want to keep that as a favorite. I can star it. If I star it, then that will then put it on my dashboard and copy it. So then I have access to that.
Let's do customization again after a document has been uploaded.
Once I've put the document in here, I can click on manage to add a class. Right now I have a class in here. If I don't see an option there, I'll just say add a class. And you can add as many classes as you want. So if you teach multiple sections, you can have multiple classes. There's no limit to the number of classes you can have, and there's no limit to the number of articles you can put in here for the individual class. So you would just click on add class and name it if you're doing it manually. So if it's like first period English, you would call it first period English or whatever. If you do happen to use Google Classroom, you would be able to import that information from your Google Classroom. So in this case, it's wanting me to go to my Google, and then it's going to have me do it that way if you do use Google Classroom on there. But if not, you can create your own and you would name it. And then once you do that, you can then add students to it. So I can just add a student. Again, it's going to ask me for that display name. So that display name that they can have if they are sharing, because they can also upload their own documents as well. So You can share assignments with them and you can assign it to them, but they can also upload their own stuff for their private use. So what name do they want to display? So I usually tell them to keep it the same as their username, especially for our little ones. And I usually tell them don't put anything identifying that identifies you as who you are. Don't put your full name in there. Don't tell them what your age is. And then the password. Again, they don't need an email to use it. You do not have to put a student's email in there. You can if they want to, and they can log in with that, but all they need is the username and password to actually access it. And then they can go in and they can do that as well. And then I can go into the word bank and I can actually add words on this if I wanted to. And I do want to share this in case you are like me and you kind of want to go ahead and play. Once you upload it, you will see this at the bottom with these little 3 dots. And this is where you can assign it, edit it, or you can do that customization and you can actually delete and add words. You can add custom questions and all that. Now that you have an account, you can actually start creating your own stuff and you can also start choosing to share stuff if you'd like. And again, your students don't have access to it until you actually assign it and give them access to it. So you can kind of play around if you choose to do so.
Absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Wendy.
We hope you enjoyed this pre-recorded webinar. After you have passed the final test with a score of 80% or greater and have received your certificate of completion, please take a few moments to complete the course evaluation. Participant feedback helps Train PD at TCAL continue to provide high-quality professional development. To leave a course feedback, please go to the completed portion of your transcript. To do this, hover over the My Learning tab and select View Your Transcript. Click on the drop-down arrow next to the word Active and select Completed. Then, click Evaluate in the drop-down menu next to the course you just completed. Please note that your feedback is greatly appreciated.